I found this book when I was in Tofino. There was a bookstore up there called Mermaid Tales Bookshop, and I found this there, and I picked it up right away. And I was actually really happy because when I mentioned that, like Karen, you mentioned that you had wanted to read this, right? So it was already on one of your book lists and stuff. So I was like, all right, that's great.
It was nominated for a Man Booker, you know, me and Man Booker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, I don't regret reading this book at all. I
Oh,
I loved it a lot. I mean, I guess I'll just go into my feelings right now. Um, I wasn't expecting to feel the things that I was gonna feel. There were definitely times where I had to sit, like, I had to close the book because I didn't want it to continue because I knew things were going to happen and I didn't want them to happen. And that's very rare for me that that a book triggers a lot of emotions. And also, like I had mentioned before to you two, that it allowed me to talk to my parents about this in a completely different way. Like, yes, I know that this is just like a quick retelling of what was happening. Like, it really doesn't convey the fear that was happening at the time, but it was a good kind of like first open door
yeah.
to invite conversations with my parents who did live through this period, right? And it's very interesting because I was talking to my parents about it. And he was like, well, you know, if my parents were around, you could not say anything bad about Chairman Mao.
Yeah.
Because for them, they lived in that period where it went from bad to good. And for them, the Communist Party is everything. But for my generation, like my dad's generation, they were the generation that started, they were the like the red guards, right? They were the ones that started questioning everything. And then they realized, what were we doing? Like, you know, why are you killing our children? Right? So they were the generation where they had to start being like, does the party actually have our best interests? And then moving towards this now generation, like the kids that I teach now, right? And their older brothers, where they're the generation that left China so that they could have choice. They could choose they could choose who to love. They could choose what to study. They could choose who they want to be. And it was really interesting to be in that world, especially in a world where Western music was considered bourgeois.
Yeah.
Right? Like our entire life, our entire education, everything that the three of us are would have been considered too, you know, highbrow, right? We would have been targeted and probably reassigned or, you know, repatriated or rehabilitated and then thrown into a factory because of what we loved, right? And it was just, I don't know, I just found that like really, really surprising because I never had thought about that, right?
Or we could have been hired to play in Mao's orchestra,
Like,
yeah,
to play only patriotic music.
Yeah, those 12 operas.
Yep.
Only
Yeah,
those 12 operas.
yeah, and it just, oh man, it was, yeah, I don't know, I felt things. I'm gonna stop it there because we'll have more time to talk about it, but I'll stop it there. Karen, why don't you go next? How did you feel about this book?
I went through a phase in the late 2000s where I just read everything set in China and I was like obsessed with it. And I haven't read a lot since then. I kind of overdosed on it. And this brought me back to it. And I remembered how much I loved just the setting, but also how much I hate the setting because it's so infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
So infuriating. I was mad. So I read a book, Wild Swans. So if you really like this one, you'll really like Wild Swans. And Wild Swans looks at 3 generations going through China and its evolution, but it's nonfiction. So if you want even more hard hitting, okay. But it brought me back to that where I was so frustrated that I had never heard of this. I'm like, how can a country go through such turmoil and we're not educated about it? And understandably, it was very fresh by the time, like when I was growing up. So like, I get it. Yeah. The end of this book, I would like to say it dehydrated me.
We have to talk.
The last bit so much. I couldn't even read. My eyes were just like so puffy and so raw. And I'm like, stop it. stop it. It took
Yeah.
a long time to get through the end, but
It was, yeah.
totally worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Amanda, how about you?
This book. After I got over that feeling of like just being completely overwhelmed by everything, I did very much enjoy it, and part of it, especially in the middle parts with Zulu at the conservatory, I felt a big sense of, I want to say like appreciation, because she's being that all that stuff about being told you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, you can't do that because that is not in the belief of our country and all that kind of stuff. And it got me thinking, you know, we can play whatever we want. We can listen to whoever we want. We can go on Google and search up whoever we want, musician, whatever, and we have that freedom. So that was kind of part of it. Was I actually got a little bit angry in the middle. I'm like, why are you not allowed to do any of these things? This does not harm you. This actually makes your musicianship a whole lot better. But that was yeah, it was a very large range of emotions. And I talked to Karen briefly the other night when I'm like, what is with this ending? And I started kind of freaking out. I'm like, why is this happening? I don't understand why this is happening. This should not be happening right now. And I think that was when I put down the book for like a good day. And I'm like, I can't handle this right now. I have to let my emotions settle before I keep on reading the last chunk of this book.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a book that you can read in 2 days.
No, this was
you
like,
have to let it sit.
You have to let it process, because there's so much that happens in a chapter. And then there's just so many characters. And the two characters that have that similar name messed me up the entire time. I couldn't, it was hard.
Yeah, I was really lucky because one of my profs realized that I was reading this. One of my profs from U Ottawa, and he was just like, last like 70 pages.
Yeah.
It feels like an accelerando of a piece. It's just gonna throw you, and you're just gonna keep on going. You're gonna keep on going, and you're gonna beg for them to stop giving you more information, but it's just gonna keep on piling, and then you get to the coda, and everything just abruptly stops.
Yeah.
And he's like, just get ready for it, like just prepare your mind for it, because like he's like pretty much the entire thing. He's like, it's like a sonata. The entire book has been leading you towards that final recapitulation.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden all the worlds collide together, all the action happens together, and you're left with nothing. Like
zero.
But like I was like,
we have
yeah, right? And I was like, oh. But I mean, hey, I thought it was really cute that she like numbered the chapters from 1 to 8, and then from 7 to 1, like the scale going up and down. That was kind of cool. I don't know how we would because like I think normally with our other picks it's easy to be able to discuss like, you know, characters, plot. I mean, I feel like plot is probably the most important thing in this one, right?
Probably.
But
I don't know. Characters are pretty like
the ones that I liked all passed away.
I know. I was so mad.
Because so all right, since we're talking about like plot and stuff, so we had talked about Zuli already. That one incident where she goes, like she sneaks out of the house and goes back to the conservatory.
Yeah.
And she rips down a poster and writes down things. I was like, oh my god, she just wrote her will.
Yeah.
Before going into Sparrow's book, and that was actually the first time I put down the book. I was like, I know this is not happening. I am not letting you go. You're not going away. I like you too much. And then
and then
I read it and I'm like, oh no, that didn't actually happen.
Because it didn't.
Back and I read it again and I'm like, no. This did not happen. She did not do this. I'm gonna read it again, and I'm like, oh my god, this is happening.
Yeah, well, because like the way that it was written was that it was just like, oh, it just happened.
Yeah,
there was no fanfare to it. It was just like it's just part of the progression of life. She took her life. He found her, and then like because like you see her like listening to music and stuff, and then the next scene is him holding her and walking her back.
Yeah.
Right, and like I said, there's no There's no pomp and circumstance. There's no flashiness to it. It just happened. So that you're just like, wait, what? And it's
an odd approach, right? Instead of going like, we're not in her mind. It just this is what happened, and that's how she sort of portrays everything. Is sort of, this is what happened, and yet we're totally sucked in.
But I think we were, at least with me, I was surprised, especially when it, like Kun said, it was just so quick. She ripped a poster and then she's gone. And you're like, whoa. And I didn't realize how much I had invested in her character until that moment. And you're like, whoa, I loved her so much.
I think what it is the scene before where she's in the supermarket. Yeah. And forgive me, it's been a while. All of the people come in and they pour ink on her.
Yes.
Cut her hair. And it's like, okay, you've lived through this. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine. And then no.
But it was you'd be fine if you laid low. But she's not that character that laid low. Yeah. She's the one that she's like, screw this. I'm gonna go to the conservatory and rip posters off and write what I want to write on them. And it made sense that she died. You know what? I did wonder whether she actually did it herself or
if somebody
staged it. That was actually a wonder. I'm like, would she have? They were so cruel to her and they beat her and threw things at her. Could it be that somebody had just followed her in and just caught her and hung her?
Yeah, well, because there's a mention that Kai might have been in that group that was humiliating her.
Exactly.
Right. So we don't actually know that. There's a lot of like unanswered questions because like the three of them, the relationship it's really weird because like I think there's like, you know, Zuli acknowledges the fact that Kai and Sparrow both love each other in more than just a filial way.
Yeah.
But they both love her and she both loves them, right? That it probably hurt her to know that Kai no longer saw. Well, it was three things, right? Because Zuli was on one end where she's like, no, I'm going to fight for like my right to party. And then Kai was like, no, like we have to protect the party. And Sparrow was just like, I'm just going to try and be neutral. I'm just going to try and be invisible. I'm just not going to I'm just going to do exactly what I'm told, right? I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to do anything. So you had like this kind of weird like triangle where every person kind of encapsulated one kind of idea of how it was. Like either you fought and you lost, or you were part of the party, or you just kind of coasted along. Yeah. Like most of the people in China were just like, you know what, like just don't rock the boat. Like we'll be fine.
Well, like, the people that rocked the boat were then extremely targeted, and we end up witnessing in this book several humiliations because you know, to people, their pride is what they have, and to take it away and completely humiliate them is just like, it's the end of the world for somebody who's especially that strong. And so you just.
But that's what they target, right? They target the strong ones because they're the ones that can.
Yeah, they're the ones. Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah.
It was. Which one was? I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the professor.
Oh, Lu Ting.
Yep.
I was like, oh no, not the professor too. No.
But he fought. He fought hard.
Yeah.
Oh, because I was like, I have to see this guy, and like, you should take a look and see what he looks like. Because I had to write down one of his quotes.
Yeah.
I went and I told everybody about this quote, and it was I wrote it down. It's that music that is immediately understood will not outlast its generation.
Yeah.
I was like, oh boy, you need to still be around and tell people like pop music that, please.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, like I know that we're jumping into that middle period right there where it's the Cultural Revolution, but I think like even at the very beginning when the whole like the redistribution of land, right?
Yeah.
The elimination, essentially the elimination of the feudal system, right? Where you had landowners and you had people and then you had people who were hired hands, right? Like even from then, it was just like, okay, so we're going to start off with this really tough time.
Yeah.
And then we're going to move on to a better time. But then it got tough again. And then you're going to move on to a better time. And like every single time you're like, oh, like, you know, like when the dreamer and Squirrel, oh, they're going to find each other and they're going to be like together, and they were, and then that life falls apart. And then you follow their daughter and you're like, okay, that like she's going to have a great life, and her life ends. And then you follow Swallow's daughter and you're like, okay, she's going to have a good life, and you don't know what happens. Like, you don't know eventually, like when she becomes older, what actually happens to her. You know that she went through turmoil, but I think there's this endless amount of like, it just, is there any hope? Like, is it always just that, is it just always being taken away from us in this book? That for me, I was just like, oh man, because like all these characters had to go through so much. Every single character had to go through so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess like for me, because I read a lot of fantasy, right? And in the end, there's good always triumphs, right? Like one of your favorite characters gets what they want, and in this book,
Nope.
well, I mean, like you follow Mary, and I guess since Mary is like, I guess the only person that's still alive, right? She doesn't get what she wants, but she has come to terms and to peace with what is happening with her life.
Yeah.
And she doesn't forgive, but she hopes that the people will forgive themselves.
Well, and I think that's the part of it is when you see that people that you love go through a trauma, it's not that you want to fix it, it's that you just want an understanding of what happened and sort of an okay foundation so that you can move on. Because for her jumping point, pardon the pun, was her father's suicide.
Yeah.
And it was, why would a man that I thought I knew, who seemed just fine, maybe a little bit sad because he divorced my mother, but why would he go to back to where, you know,
Hong Kong,
his life? Why would he go back to Hong Kong and then just jump off a building? Like, it just it didn't make sense to her. So to try and find that, and maybe you won't always get answers because life isn't always black and white.
But you have to hand her for trying. Like, she took that trip to Hong Kong and she found all these people, and she figured out, because didn't she have a chunk of the book of records as well?
Yeah, she had, is it chapter 17 that she
17. Had? She has 17.
Yeah, chapter 17. But she found like Tofu
Liu.
And all those people, and between her conversation with Li Ling.
Yuan. So Yuan was Ai Ming's friend.
No, Ai Ming was Mary, and then
no.
Li Ling was Mary, and Ai Ming came to live with her and her mom.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. And so between all the conversations, you can see like, okay, here's where I started, here's the beginning, and here's the end. Here's all the stuff you have to know in the middle for this and this to make sense. But typically, you don't always have to. Like, if I skipped right to, if I thought of this later, if I skipped right to the ending, I could kind of see how things made sense. But you're like, oh, but this character, this character, this character, this character, this character, this character.
But I think, like that's why like I really like how my professor said about the sonata thing, right? Yeah. You start off with all these different themes, these different people, all these different lives, and then you develop them. And once you get to the end, when all of the things resolve together and all the lives connect together, you really appreciate that ending because you've committed to looking at these kind of themes and these people go through their lives, be reconstructed, deconstructed, and then they come back as a completely new thing. And you're like, wow, because like when every person started getting connected together at the end, I was like, oh my goodness, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Because the entire book I was reading, for me anyways, I didn't even care if they were connected in a very superficial way or whatever. I was like, these are really interesting stories. Yeah. But to kind of sneak that in at the end, to be like, actually, this is how they're connected. Like, for me, that was the revelation of like that whole like, oh, we're getting to that recapitulation.
Yeah.
We're finally getting that closure for a lot of these things. And a lot of the holes in the story are being reconnected for me now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that you have that empathy. You have the people that you've been following. They've gone through all of these struggles, so that when you get to the climax where they're really going through the specific trauma, you have the background of maybe some history that you're not familiar with. You have the context. You have the stakes. You want to see these people survive. And then when they come together, it means that much more. And who did it mean that much more?
Yeah. There was one quote like close to the end of the book when Mary was talking to Yuen, and she was just like, oh, I really wanted to reach out to Ling. And she's like, oh, Ling, but she died in 1996.
Yeah.
Like that, even at the end of it, right? There's that just kind of like that matter of fact that just happened, right? And then Mary was taken aback, and Yuen was just like, you have to understand, this is how we were brought up.
Yeah.
These things happen. You have to be okay with it. We were taught to not think of ourselves, right? Not to believe that we could be whatever we wanted. These these things happen. These incidences happen. Like I realized going from Yuen when she was at the Tiananmen Square incident, to the Yuen that she meets in Hong Kong, are two completely different people,
right?
Because like after that incident happened, her entire hopes of her country being something different was crushed completely, and she just she said, right, I will, like, that hope is gone, but I will not forget.
Yeah, I did like that we got her her future self, I Ming's first future self with
When the Dreamer,
family,
and Swirl,
and then we got her past self so that we could see how you would get there.
Yeah, because like she went to them and then went to Istanbul and then to Toronto, and that's how they connected. And that's why I was like, in the end, it's like kind of like cyclical structure, right? You go back to the beginning, because you start off, like when you start off, there's this random girl that shows up, right? And so somehow, like, you know, Mary's father is connected to her father, but even at the very beginning, you don't know that that Swallow dies.
No,
you just know that their fathers are friends.
Yeah, and you know that the parents want her out. They want her to be safe. Right? So out of nowhere, you're like, okay. But then, like, when I realized that Swallow actually dies, I was like, oh.
My heart. Yeah.
Well, and that part where Ling gets the cardboard box of ashes, and it was only then when she opens the box, and then all of a sudden her feelings just explode out of her. Right? She decides she quits the Radio Beijing. She moves back in with her mom, who she quarreled with actually when she was younger. Right? Because like she was just like, you're old, you don't understand, right? But now she understands. Right? But then from that incident, she only lasted 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just so sad. You're just like,
This entire book was sad. It was definitely it was turmoil.
Yeah. It reminded me when we were talking about the conservatory incident, right? About the censorship, because I had watched V for Vendetta a couple, like right back when it first started. At the very beginning of that movie, right? There's an explosion, right? And V's doing something, and then there's this music, and then the dictator is like, "Oh, ban that music. We don't want to listen to that music." It's like right? So at the beginning of the movie, he bans it, and in this book, it says that Debussy was too like not bougie, but like, you know, like it was too free. Listening to Debussy would have given people bad feelings, and we don't want to. So no one was allowed to play or listen to Debussy.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, no, Debussy is my favorite composer. But you're right. It's just that we take for granted the fact that we can criticize our government without being killed or move to a different part of the country. Like the fact that Ling lived in, was it Beijing for 20 years?
Yeah.
Or however long, and then, you know, and they never, like, or Shanghai, and then Swallow was in a cold water ditch.
Yeah.
Right? But the fact that she was not allowed, she didn't have a choice to raise her child. Nope. She had to move because the party knew best. And I think for me, it was just this, like, while I was reading, just this whole, like, why do people believe in this party? But we were never in that situation where we were told the party knows best, that we should always criticize ourselves. That it is our own desires, right?
The thing is that it was very gradual, and it was all taken from a positive point of view, and it began with that 100 Flowers campaign, where the government said, "Sure, send in all of your criticisms. If you have anything to say about our party, go for it. Tell us your stuff." And people sent in their stuff, and they went, "Okay, we're going to target you, because you told us that you don't like us. So now we'll just get rid of you."
Yeah.
We'll kind of go, oh yeah, well that makes sense. They didn't have our country's
best interest
at heart, and we want what's best for China. And you think about what they were going through. They had like the famine, and they wanted to be seen as a global player. Yeah. And they wanted to be a powerhouse, but they just couldn't get out of the hole.
Yeah. It became a thing where you don't know any different because it gradually happened. So the idea of criticizing your government, that's not a viable idea. You're not raised to do that. Whereas the three of us, we're raised like you question things. If you don't believe in them, you question this, you ask, sometimes you demand, like it's how we've grown up here. But like, you go to a place like that, the first thing you learn when you're in diapers is you do not criticize. You follow the rules and you'll be fine. You listen to those people up there and then they will have your back.
And look what happens to the people who don't follow the rules.
Look at your neighbor. He gets all of his stuff taken away. They are, what's that word that they use? They're denounced. And
family members would rat on their own family members.
Well, because they had to denounce Zuli, right?
Yeah.
And write those mean things on the posters outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also a different world because the people of China don't get to choose their government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Like we do. The reason why we do is because that it is part of our identity, right? We are vocal because these politicians are one vote away from them being out of power constantly, right? So it's a little bit different. And I remember talking to my parents about this, and like my dad was saying how he's like, we in the West, we don't usually focus on Eastern cultures because we believe that we don't have a right to criticize other cultures that are non-white because Canadians and Americans are predominantly European. Yeah. So we criticize things like Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, right? He's like, yes, those leaders did terrible, terrible things.
But we don't criticize.
But so did Chairman Mao.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to. We find that like that would be a little bit too racist, quote unquote, right? To say things. He's like, that's why we don't really hear it sometimes. But he's like, the problem with Mao Zedong is that there was a generation that really believed in him because they did prosper under him, right? Yeah. And you come to our generation that has a different education, that has lived in a different country, and we look back and go, is progress for progress' sake really worth it? Is the riches that my country is experiencing right now worth the 60+ million people that died for it?
Or were slaughtered.
Yeah. Or disappeared, whatever, right? Is it worth that? Because here in Canada, we can ask those questions. Yeah. And for us, we don't think it's worth it. Yeah. But for some people in China, that is worth it, right? 60 million out of 1.3 billion is not a lot of people. So whatever, right? Progress is like, as long as we survive, right?
Yeah.
Ban classical music, like denounce these professors who say that they're better than us, right? And all these things, and and believe that this party has like the big brother, right? Like it just has your back because, like you mentioned, most people just didn't know better, and a lot of people benefited from some of these reforms, right? Like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I have land, right? I didn't have land before, but now I have land. But the thing is, unfortunately, I don't know how to farm, so lots of people die because of a famine, right? But people don't care about that.
What they did too is they would go, oh, well, now we have all of this land, we can farm it. And I think they wanted, was it iron or something? They wanted
steel.
Thank you. They wanted steel. So they would ship people from the city into the country and not really supply them with anything. Like they wouldn't give them clothes. They'd be like, oh yeah, there's a food kitchen, a soup kitchen. You'll be fed. But it was to support a certain amount of people, and they were shipping out way more, and they were working at all times of night, and it just like, it was like
that gap of understanding. It's like, I understand that I now have property. I understand that I could farm it and then be successful at farming, but there's that in between of how do I farm? What do I need? Who do I need? So it's a very short term. I find that short-term satisfaction of yes, I have this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to go on with it, but at least I have it.
Yeah, and I think that
giving the person something without the knowledge, and
Yeah.
so
But that's the thing, it's that lack of knowledge, right?
precisely.
yeah,
Well,
it's
and
a guarantee fail.
Yeah.
and that big problem of like even throughout the book, right? There was a person. I can't remember her name. Was a fan, one of the radio workers.
Oh, Fame.
She wanted to be a physicist.
Not allowed.
Nope, she had to make radios.
Not allowed.
Right? Didn't make sense, right? Swallow was a composer, had to make radios, right? And this whole sense of like, but
I don't know. I'm sorry, but Sparrow was offered and he turned it down.
that's true. Yeah,
He was offered because Kai said, "Let me take you with me. Let me open this position in."
yeah. But I don't think that incident was because of the position. I think it was because of him being scared of opening up his feelings completely with Kai, right? Leaving with Kai would have meant like
You're leaving with Kai.
Well, and also like I think at the time wasn't he had a daughter already, right? He already had Aiming at that time, so he had to think about his family, and he couldn't just do whatever.
I feel like Julie's death also affected the decision too. It's like, would I rather continue doing the thing that I love but be told how I do it, or just give it up?
Don't do it at all.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Would you do that? Would you play music and be told you have to do these 12 operas for the rest of your life?
It's that whole, it's the selling your soul, right? You're still playing music, but you don't get any choice in the matter.
But are you one of those people that say, well, at least I'm still doing music? Or do you say, like, if I can't be who I am as a musician?
Kai he completely lost himself, and that when he had the opportunity to kind of think about playing piano again, he just couldn't bear it. He just couldn't get back into that mindset. And
when you think about all the stuff that he did, like being one of the Red Guards and doing those things to those students and being like, you must respect the government and all this kind of stuff. And I think of it as like, I can't do it because who said it? They said Zuli was the purist in her, no, Sparrow. Sparrow was the purist in his love for music. He was like the purest one. He loved it for the sake of music, not because the government told him to. And reading when Kai's like, I can't do this anymore, is it because you can't stack up to Sparrow? Like your love is no longer pure.
I think the thing is like in the end, like even when the three characters drifted apart, right, they were still influenced by each other, right? Zuli's death influenced Sparrow to no longer take up music, and because of that, I think that was the jumping board for Kai to be like, if he can't do this, how can I do this, right? Because I don't know, it's it makes you think a lot about different things about your life, huh?
It's just so intricate, this book.
But hey, you know what? I still love the fact that even like every different time period that you went through, there was at least still one or two people who were involved with music. Because Swirl and Big Mother sang in the brothel or the house, right? The performance house, right? And that's how When the Dreamer started writing those books, right? For her. And their daughter becomes a violinist because of her proximity to Sparrow. Because Zuli just shows up one day because her parents were taken away, right? And then Sparrow and Kai, and then Kai, his daughter becomes a mathematician because Aiming, who was the daughter of Sparrow, like, and then like there's and like in the end, because of that, like she understood that like her father Kai was a musician, but didn't understand how much it impacted his life, and in the end, she finds that music too. Like even though she is not a musician herself. Right, but she like it's so cool. I think like that's like just like the sprinkling there, like the use of like music, like folk music, from the singing of the folk music to the actual intense studying of Western music to now the appreciation of that music at the end, right? I love this book.
I do just say I was surprised at how much music there was in it in some ways, because we've read those books where it's like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of music, and you read and they're like, okay, so there's one mention of one artist and that's about it. But
no, this was intense.
Yeah,
like it was.
This was in every chapter. I'm
Yeah.
like, I can.
No, you're reading this, and it's like you're talking to a music student who
Right?
really loves the Goldberg variations, right? And not just dropping. It's not like The Loser, right? It's not like The Loser where it's just like they just had that one name, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like The Loser was interesting, but it was like for me, I think the music as a theme was very superficial in that sense. Yeah. It was the catalyst of the people dying. But in this book,
very narrow.
Yes. In this book, it's like they talk about different recordings, and I actually started looking those up and listening to them, and they exist. Like the original Goldberg variations by Glenn Gould, and then the second like recording, right? And then listening to them and realizing how they describe these recordings is exactly how they sound.
Yeah.
Right? Like this person did her homework. This person, right? Like, and I was just like, wow. And then like just for example, like just the different names of different composers that came out with the different like the Busoni, like retranscriptions and everything. And I was like, this is like back in music history class again with like Bruce talking about the love of performance.
I loved the was it Prokofiev's story?
Yeah.
Where Prokofiev died a few days after Stalin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his death was sort of not even acknowledged because
it was like on page 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that idea of dying into obscurity, you're afraid of that. But like, look, his music still lives on. I mean, what do we have of Stalin other than his terrible legacy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we have the joy of Prokofiev.
Yeah. And also like the stories, like, I mean, I had heard about some of these stories before, but like I never like this had really kind of thrown it, like Shostakovich, for example, right? Being criticized by his government that his music was too bourgeois, it was too flowery. You needed to create something that was less like this, right? And then Shostakovich just lying to his government the entire time, be like, I'm doing something, I will write something, and then never. And it's just like that coming into this book in a way to kind of highlight, I guess. Like, it's not just these characters that were going through this stuff. Composers we know were going through this as well.
This is a common thread that art is always sort of targeted as being just a little bit too progressive. Like it might, there's some that just are commentary on society and not everybody likes it. And you get the writing, you get the art, the physical art, and then you get the music. And music is always the tougher one because it's you can't continue. I mean, you can now. We can record it.
Yeah.
But, like in the past, you just couldn't. You just kind of had to go by what people said in letters and stuff. So it's I've always enjoyed the idea that artists are always kind of
one step ahead,
and the government's always like, no, you can't do that. Can you do it more like this? The artists are like, here's the middle finger. Like,
and it just makes you appreciate like a lot of the stuff, like a lot of the music and art and poetry and stuff that we read as old at one point was avant-garde. Right? It was in your face and it scared people. Right? It scared like art toppled governments. Right?
Or caused riots.
The riots,
I was gonna say Stravinsky's riots. Like that is the one thing that for some reason I just kept on thinking about him when they're like, you can't do this. I'm like, Stravinsky did it anyway. And he set fire to the entire auditorium. So whatever. Or well, they lit it on fire. But
or even like further back, Haydn's Surprise Symphony. He was tired falling asleep in his. He's like, oh, well then I will lull sleep and then boom.
Yeah. And it's I don't know, I think it's really, really cool. Like just like I said, like the fact that I was reading this and I never once did I question the author's authenticity in her research in music.
It's that
the entire time I read, I was like, she did her homework.
That Li Ling was a mathematician. I believed all of the I believed all of the history. Like this is a well put together book.
Yeah. But the music part actually has like what Poon was saying, it's not the superficial, there's substance to it. Yeah. Where like you're reading about like Beethoven's Eroica or Beethoven's Eroica, I think it was.
Yeah.
Like, and you're getting these little snippets of history. I'm like, I remember this. I remember talking about this, or I remember this was mentioned. Like, I was talking about this how many years ago when we were in history 2, I think, or 3 or 4 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and just like the fact that like reading this book has made me also appreciate a lot of the works that were banned, that were like, oh no, don't play the Emperor.
Yeah.
Don't play the Eroica. Don't play like let go of Ravel, because she was working on Sigan, right?
Yeah.
Right. And for me, I was like, but that piece is beautiful. But then like listening to it again from this context of something being dangerous for a government.
Yeah.
Right. Like all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's okay. I can see why a government would want to ban this piece. It's too freeing.
What really killed me was the burning of the students' compositions.
Yeah.
And it kind of made sense to me, where you go, can you name any Chinese composers of the time? No? Why is that? And you kind of go, oh, they're actually, the Cultural Revolution was doing away of culture.
The neo ideas
actually don't have anything. It's all gone. It was too much, so they just that kills me.
Yeah. And just this whole history repeats itself. Like, you read this book and you're like, how can a government come in and tell people who are really good at what they do that they are revolutionaries, right? They are rightists, that they need to be rehabilitated and sent off far away or quietly disposed of, right? And you're like, how could someone do this? But this has happened before. The great emperor of China killed thousands of scholars, right? All these people who denounced him because he said that he was God. He made them build the Great Wall of China, right? Just history, just gone.
Yep.
Just gone, evaporated. And the reappropriation of land and the Cultural Revolution was just this whole idea that they want to distance themselves from that 5,000 years of history. They didn't want to be part of the dynastic history of China, because that was old. We want to be new now. We want to be like industrialized. We want to move forward with it, but like at the cost of losing so much.
It's a good point to make, of that you can't cling to the past. You have to keep moving forward, but to completely deny your past is to deny yourself.
And to deny your past means that it's not learning from it. It's like, well, this didn't happen. Well, if it didn't happen, it obviously did happen. If you don't acknowledge it, how are you ever going to learn or not make those same mistakes again?
And when people are so desperate for something to be better, they're so depressed, they want to be out of it, they might just go for something that they know is maybe not good for them. Maybe today, and you get the same result, and you kind of go, oh, but I think we're a little more awake.
But I think sometimes that ambition is so blinded, right? Like, you're trying so hard to not be something that you inadvertently become that something. It's awful as it sounds, like it's when you have kids, I guess, because I hear this from parents that I try so hard to not be my mom or my dad. I have become my mom or my dad or my grandma or something like that. Like you're so fixated that you don't realize that you're actually quite similar.
What else do you know?
That's true. What else do you know?
Where am I getting my education? Well, you're going to go with what your experience is.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, along that lines, it kind of sucks that like that history is repeated and everything, but she still somehow made you sympathize.
Oh yeah.
With those people, right? Because yes, they did bad things, but they really wanted China to be better. They wanted a better life for their kids. They wanted a better life for their people. They like.
It's the hope.
It's like was it the road to like hell is paved with good intentions or whatever, right?
Yes,
like they like the thing is that you hurt because they really wanted something really beautiful, but how they got there was very ugly.
Mm.
Right. And like what my father said, where he's like, progress in the result of 60 million plus people dying is not progress.
Yeah.
If you have to kill people to advance yourself, it is not advancement. You're going backwards. People should not need to die for your cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this book.
This book. I feel like we can talk forever about this book. There's so much. Like, you take one chapter and we could discuss that one chapter to bit.
Yeah. I was finishing up work today and I was like, how in the world are we going to be able to talk about this within an hour? Like,
this book is so complex. It's crazy. Like, I know that I can't do it now, but I know I'm going to have to reread this sometime to get the stuff that I didn't get the first time.
Yep. The one thing that we haven't discussed is the coda, where we have the recording.
Yes.
On the day that Kai, was it that he died, or that he was supposed to meet with Sparrow or find out about?
I think.
The day that Sparrow and Kai should have been united.
Yeah, they're gonna meet
on June the 20th. They got together and they reunited those three. Kai is the piano, Julie is the violin, and Sparrow is the composer. And even in death, we bring them alive again, and we have that incredible, powerful moment where Li-Ling is hearing this composition and just it was the most perfect way to end the whole book.
How did she not win the Booker T prize? I'm just saying.
I don't know. I wonder who won it that year.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look it up.
Sure. I mean, do you think that maybe perhaps like this book? There was another book that was very similar to this. I think it was not in the same thread. So don't compare these two, but the chimes. The chimes was interesting because it used so much jargon that only musicians would understand. So I'm wondering if this is something like, for example, like the Cultural Revolution, which is a very, very specific topic that not many people know about, number one. And then you have this very, like, I appreciate it because I know all of the terminology, I know all of the composers' names, I know all of the names. Do you wonder if that could have been one of the reasons why, like maybe it wasn't accessible, maybe, quote unquote? Question mark?
This one or the chimes?
No, this one. Like and along that line, whereas like it could have been written for a very specific audience, but I would be interested to see who won that year.
Was it nominated for 2016 or 2000?
Yeah, 2016.
Okay, 2016. The one that won. Okay, this year's winner was Lincoln in the Bardo. Where do you find it? It's called The Sellout by Paul Beatty.
Okay, that's on my to-read list.
So that one is the one that won.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy it tomorrow and read it and then decide for myself if he should have won.
I don't know. We're kind of like so emotionally invested into this one.
So the Man Booker are all the English Commonwealth writers. I was going to say composer.
Well, they were composing words. You were right. You would be right.
They put stuff together. So yeah, this was a fantastic pick, and I don't mind that it was over our word count.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, you guys.
Only by
you know what? It's okay. If it wasn't over the word count, we wouldn't have gotten that powerful coda.
That is true.
So
no, I'm glad you guys like this because I was reading this and I was like, oh my god, this is sorry, you guys.
So if you want to be emotionally brought through the ringer as well, Wild Swans, really good.
Okay, I've written that down.
The tail end of Foot Binding, and then so it's 3 generations of women: a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter, and then the mother going through the whole like beginning of the Cultural Revolution and being like targeted and stuff, and then you get the daughter. And I can't really remember much about the daughter because I just remember the mother's story and the Cultural Revolution and all of that being so traumatic. Where I was like, oh wow. So highly recommended if you really liked this, but just be forewarned, it's a lot more stark.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I think I need a break before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say, I will reread this book one day.
Me too. I will too.
Yeah.
Just not right now.
Yeah, not right now.
I can't handle this story again. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised. I like reading the back. I'm just reading it right now. I wasn't expecting a journey like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was very fun. In like a very satisfying kind of like
it was a very satisfying book. I agree.
Yeah. I wonder,
you know, like you come out of it a better person for having known it.
Yeah. Like I'm reading the back again, like you, and I'm like, I wonder how hard it was for them to write this blurb.
Yeah.
Like considering how much is in this book, you read the back and you're like, this seems pretty straightforward. Nope, it's not. But it's, you know, I do wonder how difficult was it to write that blurb in the back.
Yeah. Because essentially this is like this right here is like the first 5 seconds of the piece.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is literally the beginning of the story, right? And then their chance meeting connects you to this big gigantic world where like you just I don't know I don't know, like I was always fighting, like I had to put it down to think about things, but I wanted to pick it back up and read it again because I really wanted to know what's happening. And at no point did I even care that she jumped from one storyline to the other. Like that was one Yeah, like that's one thing that I actually am having issues with what's that really famous one, Game of Thrones? Is that well he'll jump to a different house and I'll be like, I don't care about this house. I want to keep on reading that house.
You know what? I remember reading those, and you would read the first bit of the chapter and you're like, oh, okay, fine, I like this person. And by the end of it, you're like, okay, I'm really invested. And then it'd be a new chapter and you're like, no, I don't want to read this new chapter. I want to read well, fine, whatever. I'll just keep reading it. Oh, okay. Oh, actually, what's going on here is really good. And he would just do this and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Because like I read other books that were similar to this, and I would read I was like, you know, this character, I was like, skip. But this one is like every single time, like she would switch to a different character. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. We get to continue her story. Like I never felt like there was a sharp cutoff from one story to the next, because it felt like they belonged together, and in the end, they all melded together anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
masterfully cool.
Very much.
Yes. Miss Thien, thank you so much. This was a great book.
Yes, thank you.
You want to talk about our next book?
Yeah, Amanda. So I think it's your pick, right?
I did, and I picked this book. I don't remember where I got it, to be honest. And it's called The Piano Shop on the Left Bank. And I actually want to say I bought a book lot off my buy and sell site, and this was in it, and I decided to keep it. But it's about this guy named Thad Carhart, and he takes his 2 kids to school every morning, and he always passes by this storefront called the Des Forges Pianos. It's in Paris, and he kind of just goes into the art of the piano, and intertwined with a story. Okay, here we go. Unable to stifle his curiosity, he finally lands the proper introduction, and a world previously hidden is brought into view. Luc, the Alletier's master, proves an indispensable guide to the history and art of the piano. Intertwined with a story of a musical friendship are reflections on how pianos work, their glorious history, and stories of the people who care for them, from amateur pianists to craftsmen who make the mechanism sing. So looking this up, I didn't realize this until I talked to Karen recently, but this is actually put under a memoir, so it's nonfiction. I didn't realize that, and it's gotten some pretty good reviews on Goodreads, so I'm actually pretty stoked.
I think it would be our first nonfiction book.
I think it is, and there are 268 pages.
Nice. Hey, guys. The loser was way less than 400 pages.
Oh, it took so long to read the loser.
Okay, and it felt like 2,000. So
So pages don't even matter.
Yeah.
no, because like I mean, there were definitely books where it was longer that we read, but we just kind of blew through.
Yeah.
So
I will say that I couldn't find this book on Indigo, but it's on Amazon.
Okay.
And Karen found it at the library.
It's probably, you could probably get it on Book Depository as well, but
Probably.
Depository you have to usually wait like 6 weeks.
Yeah, if not more, and especially it's Christmas, it takes a long time.
yeah, and and just because I was tardy this time, I wanted to read it earlier this time. So I'll be on top of it this time. Yeah. So I'm gonna. I think I already.
When are we reading it for? Is it January or February?
January?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that February might be really busy for you guys because it's right before spring break, right?
March. February.
March is the busy one?
February is university spring break.
Oh, that's true. No, but I mean, like, you guys might be busy leading up to your spring break.
It'll be report cards-ish.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, report cards. Oh, whatever.
Like into report cards.
Okay, so did you guys want to do end of January then?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So
We can figure out dates offline, but so you guys, the next book is Piano Shop on the Left Bank
by Fat Carhart.
All right, so I hope you guys pick it up, please. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a very fun read this past time. Yeah, well, hey, it'll be our 10th hangout next time. Hey.
Ooh.
I'm gonna get some alcohol for that. We can celebrate our 10th hangout.
I have pretend alcohol.
Alcohol for the 9th for the win.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Night.
Bye.